how Nazi rocket scientists built America's path to the moon. Imagine this: the brilliant minds that built Hitler's doomsday rockets and the V 2s that rained terror on London didn't end up in chains at Nuremberg. Nope, they got red carpet treatment in the land of the free. Welcome to the wild, twisted tale of Operation Paperclip, America's top secret plot to snatch over 1,600 Nazi scientists straight from the rubble of the Third Reich and rocket them to the heart of the U.S. military machine. These were no ordinary eggheads. We're talking Werner von Braun, the SS officer who dreamed up the buzz bombs, now plotting our moonshot. And get this, their slave-built horrors swept under the rug for Cold War gold. Today we're ripping open the files, exposing the geniuses, the atrocities, and the ethical bombshell that still echoes in NASA's halls. If you think history's black and white, hit play, stick around, smash that like button if you're ready to question everything, and subscribe for more mind-bending deep dives into the shadows of power. Let's launch. Operation Paperclip, a covert initiative of the United States government, stands as one of the most ethically fraught chapters in the annals of post-war American history. Launched in the chaotic final months of World War II and extending the early years of the Cold War, the program systematically recruited over 1,600 German scientists, engineers, technicians. Many of them had deep ties to the Nazi regime and relocated them to the United States. These individuals brought with them invaluable expertise in rocketry, aeronautics, chemical and biological warfare, and other advanced technologies that had fueled the Third Reich's war machine. The primary objective was twofold: to harness this knowledge to accelerate American scientific and military advancements, and to deny it to rival powers, particularly the Soviet Union. The program's origins trace back to the spring of 1945 as Allied forces advanced into Germany and uncovered the staggering scope of Nazi scientific achievements. From the V-2 ballistic missiles that terrorized London to the pioneering work in jet propulsion and nerve agents, German innovations posed both a threat and an opportunity. Fearing that these experts might fall into Soviet hands or flee to neutral countries, U.S. military intelligence acted swiftly. What began as Operation Overcast in July 1945, aimed at shortening the war against Japan, quickly morphed into a broader post-war strategy. By November 1945, it was rechristened Operation Paperclip, a name derived from the innocuous paperclips Ordnance Corps officers used to mark files of rocket specialists, effectively bypassing rigorous background checks. President Harry S. Truman approved the expanded program on September 3, 1946, authorizing the importation of up to 1,000 specialists under, quote, temporary limited military custody, with an explicit directive to exclude ardent Nazi or active supporters of the regime. However, this stipulation was routinely ignored. The Joint Intelligence Objective Agency, JIOA, comprising representatives from the Army, Navy, Air Force, and State Department, orchestrated the operation, often whitewashing records to sanitize candidates' pasts. Over the next decade, these recruits contributed groundbreaking U.S. programs, from the development of Saturn V rocket that carried astronauts to the moon to advancements in chemical weapons and space medicine. Yet, Paperclip's legacy is indelibly stained by controversy. Many recruits were former Nazi Party members, SS officers, or even implicated in war crimes, including the use of slave labor and human experimentation. The program's architects prioritized expediency over justice, setting a precedent for moral compromises in the name of national security. This podcast delves into the background, planning, implementation, key figures, ethical dilemmas, living conditions, contributions, and the enduring impact of Operation Paperclip, drawing on declassified documents, historical analyses, and firsthand accounts to illuminate a story of innovation born from atrocity. Some of the background of the planning here. The seeds of Operation Paperclip were sown amid the rubble of Nazi Germany as the Allies raced to secure the Reich's scientific treasures. By early 1945, the Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force, SHAEF, had established T-Force, a specialized unit that ballooned to over 2,000 personnel by June. Their mission? To target and seize 5,000 German installations related to critical technologies like synthetic rubber, V-2 rockets, and jet aircraft. This effort uncovered the Ossenberg List, a clandestine roster compiled by SS officer Werner Ossenberg, identifying thousands of politically reliable, unquote, scientists for wartime recall. Discovered in fragments, famously one piece flushed down a toilet at Bonn University, the list became a recruitment Bible prioritizing experts like Werner von Braun. As the war in Europe concluded on May 8th, 1945, U.S. leaders grappled with strategic implementations. The Joint Chief of Staff on July 20th, 1945, formalized Operation Overcast, exploit German talent against Japan and from post-war military research. Concerns mounted that scientists might emigrate to neutrals like Switzerland or be just scooped up by the Soviets, who were already launching parallel efforts. The U.S. Army's Counterintelligence Corps, CIC, played a pivotal role with Major Robert B. Staver compiling a hit list of rocket engineers. Planning intensified under the JIOA, established in 1945, to coordinate inter-service intelligence. Early interrogations occurred at sites like Camp Dustbin near Paris, relocated to Kranzberg Castle outside of Frankfurt. The Combined Intelligence Objective Subcommittees, CIOS, they love these acronyms, supplied targeting data, guiding T-Force raids on labs and factories. By July 1st, 1945, when Saxony and Thuringia fell into the Soviet zone, a frantic evacuation airlifted some 1,800 technicians and 3,700 family members westward. The program's ethical framework was shaky from the start. Truman's 1946 directive forbade recruiting Nazis, but JIOA officials in the league with the Office of Strategic Services, OSS, the CIA's predecessor, routinely expunged incriminating details from dossiers. As historian Brian Krim observed, the paperclip, quote, announced, "Don't look too closely, this guy is one of ours," unquote. This deliberate obfuscation reflected a Cold War calculus. Soviet aggression under Stalin trumped Nuremberg justice. By 1947, the program had formalized contracts offering one-year terms, extendable to citizenship. The Air Force sponsored the most recruits, 260 between 1945 and 1952, followed by the Army and Navy. Legal hurdles, like immigration quotas, were circumvented via the U.S. consulate in Mexico in 1950. The planning phase thus transformed a war salvaged operation into a cornerstone of U.S. technological dominance at the cost of moral integrity. Implementation and recruitment of Operation Paperclip unfolded with military precision and clandestine flair. The first wave arrived in September 1945. 7 rocket scientists, including von Braun's inner circle, landing at Fort Strong in Boston Harbor. Transported under guard to Fort Bliss, Texas, and White Sands Proving Ground, New Mexico, they were classified as, quote, War Department special employees to evade scrutiny. By April 1950, von Braun's full team, over 100 strong, relocated to Redstone Arsenal in Huntsville, Alabama. You know it, dubbed Rocket City. Recruitment targeted high value domains: rocketry, aeronautics, medicine, and chemical engineering. Scouts from the enemy personnel exploitation section scoured occupied zones, offering incentives like family reunification and U.S. salaries far exceeding German post war wages. Von Braun himself surrendered to Americans on May 2nd, 1945, in Bavaria, quipping that we despise the French. We are mortally afraid of the Soviets. We do not believe the British can afford us. So that leaves the Americans, unquote. His group of 1,000 plus colleagues followed suit. The process involved the capture, interrogation, and vetting, or lack thereof. At Camp Dustman, scientists endured grueling sessions, yielding troves of documents and prototypes. The U-234 submarine surrender on May 15, 1945, epitomized the haul. It carried uranium oxide, V-weapon blueprints, and experts like Heinz Schlickel. By 1947, an estimated 1,600 specialists and families had been extracted, valued at $10 billion in patents. Logistics were Herculean. Airlifts from Tempelhof Airport evacuated Mittelwerk survivors from Nordhausen, where V2s were built using slave labor. Families were housed in compounds like Paperclip Village in Huntsville, with children attending American schools under assumed names. Contracts stipulated non-disclosure, binding recruits to secrecy about the Nazi pasts. Challenges abounded. Soviet abductions via Operation Paperclip in October 1946 snatched 2,000 plus experts, prompting U.S. countermeasures. Internal resistance from the State Department, wary of immigration laws, was overridden by the military brass. By 1959, 94 paperclip scientists had fully integrated, with 36 returning to Germany and one, Walter Schreiber, fleeing to Argentina amid war crime probes. Implementation succeeded through audacious improvisation, relocating a brain trust that propelled U.S. innovation while burying its dark origins. Some of the key figures and their contributions. No account of Paperclip is complete without profiling its luminaries, whose dual legacies of destruction and discovery define the program. Grouped by field, I'll talk about these individuals exemplifying the talent harvested. Rocketry and missiles, Werner von Braun, the program's poster child, led V2 development, overseeing a factory where 20,000 slave laborers perished, gone. An SS major, he surrendered with 500 staff, arriving in the U.S. on September 20th, 1945. At Fort Bliss, he tested capture V2s. By 1950, in Huntsville, he directed the Redstone missile precursor to the Jupiter and Saturn series. As NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center director from 1960, von Braun architected the Saturn V, enabling Apollo's 1969 moon landing. His public persona as a space visionary obscured his past. A 1961 FBI probe cleared him, but Ford, that is President Ford, denied him the Medal of Freedom in 1975 over Nazi ties. Kurt DeBus, another SS member, managed V2 electrical systems in Germany. In America, he launched Explorer 1 in 1958, the first U.S. satellite, and became Kennedy Space Center's inaugural director in 1962, overseeing Apollo launches. Konrad Dannenberg, a propulsion expert, contributed to Saturn V engines. Walter Dernberger advised U.S. missile programs post-war, later consulting for Boeing. Arthur Rudolph, operations director at Mittelwerk, where forced labor built 6,000 V2s, joined von Braun's team. He developed the Pershing missile and Saturn V's production, earning NASA's Distinguished Service Medal. Extracted 1984 amid slave labor allegations, he renounced citizenship to avoid trial. Magnus von Braun, Werner's brother, worked on V2 guidance. In the U.S., he contributed to chemical research at Redstone. Herbert Axter, a legal chief, aided U.S. rocketry administration. The von Braun group, 127 initial recruits, formed the nucleus of America's ICBM program. So it has a history. It continues all the way today. Aeronautics, Adolf Busserman pioneered swept wing designs for the Me-262 jet at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. His aerodynamics work influenced U.S. fighters like the F-86 Sabre. Hans Antmann, an aerospace engineer, authored The Vanishing Paperclips, detailing his transition. Hans Pabst von Ohain, jet engineer, co-inventor, worked at Wright-Patterson until 1979, meeting British counterpart Frank Whittle in 1974. Werner Damm contributed to ramjet tech in the U.S. He advanced hypersonic research. Ernest R.G. Eckert. He specialized in high heat transfer for speed flight, impacting NASA designs. Medicine and biology. Herbert Strughold, the father, quote unquote, the father of space medicine, conducted high altitude experiments at Daku, possibly involving prisoners. Randolph Field, Texas. He developed pressure suits and life support systems, launching animal flights like rhesus monkey Albert in 1948. The Aerospace Medical Association named an award after him until 2013, when Nazi links prompted its renaming. Kurt Blom, Director Reich Health Leader, oversaw plague experiments on Buchwald inmates. Acquitted at Nuremberg due to U.S. intervention. He consulted on biological weapons at Camp Detrick, Maryland, countering Soviet biowarfare. Walter Schreiber, tied to Ravensbrück, human tests, directed U.S. medical research until 1951, when the accusations forced his exit to Argentina. Chemistry and other fields. Otto Ambros, I.G. Farben executive, helped develop sarin, nerve gas, Deinherfurth. Convicted in Nuremberg, but released early, he advised U.S. chemical firms on synthetic rubber. Gerhard Schrader invented Tabun and sarin. His knowledge aided Edwards' Arsenal nerve agent programs. Richard Galen Wehrmacht, intelligence chief, built the CI-backed Galen organization, employing 600 ex-Nazi to spy on the Soviets. These figures, among 1,600 total, accelerated U.S. tech by decades. Von Braun's team alone saved years on Saturn V. Strughold's work enabled human spaceflight. Yet their contributions came freighted with blood. Controversies and ethical issues of Operation Paperclip's moral rot lay exposed in its willful blindness to Nazi atrocities. Truman's ban on recruiting, quote, active Nazis was a farce. JIOA censors stripped dossiers of SS memberships, party cards, and war crime hints. Roughly half of the early recruits were Nazis, a minority of hardcore ideologues. As declassified under Clinton's 1998 Nazi War Crimes Disclosure Act reveals, this cover-up hosted potential Nuremberg defendants. War crimes loomed large. Middleworks' hellish tunnels where Rudolph and von Braun's V2s were forged by slaves, of which 1/3 died, exemplified the taint. George Rickey was tried in 1947 but acquitted for lack of evidence. U.S. prosecutors hobbled by paperclip priorities. Paperclip priorities. Schreiber's role in typhus tests on Poles surfaced in 1951, prompting his flight. Blom's Buchenwald plague releases evaded justice via the U.S. hire. Human experimentation scandals compounded the infamy. Strughol's Daku chamber tests, freezing prisoners to study hypothermia, violating emerging Nuremberg Code tenets. Blum's bioweapons work at Dietrich echoed Nazi horrors, fueling ethical debates on, quote, the end justifies the means. Broader controversies include intelligence abuses. Paperclip birthed Operation Bluebird, 1945, and it morphed into MK Ultra's mind control horrors. Frank Olson, a Dietrich scientist, died in 1953 after unwitting LSD dosing, a paperclip-inspired probe into Soviet brainwashing. Gellen's network, riddled with ex-Gestapo, spied effectively, but imported Nazi methods, eroding U.S. moral high ground. Public reckoning came late. In 1970s, journalism unearthed Rudolph's past, forcing his 1984 denaturalization. Von Braun's 1987 biography glossed at SS oaths. Sturghold's award was stripped in 2013. Historians like Annie Jacobson decry the deep state precedent, rewarding war criminals with citizenship and honors, as 765 paperclippers received by 1959. Critics argue paperclip normalized ethical shortcuts, prioritizing tech over justice. Defenders, citing Soviet threats, claim it averted Armageddon. The truth, I don't know, a Faustian bargain that tainted America's soul. Living conditions and interrogation. Paperclip's recruits endured a liminal existence, blending privilege and paranoia. Initial quarters were Spartan. Barbed wire compounds at Fort Bliss, dubbed Fort Blissful, with armed guards and censored males. Families joined later, housed in segregated Little Germany, they called it, enclaves like Huntsville's Paperclip Village, where sauerkraut mingled with Southern barbecue. Salaries dwarf German norms, $5,000 US dollars annually versus post-war Reichsmark's worthlessness. But isolation had its consequences. Contracts barred politics or job hopping. Many assumed as aliases to dodge scrutiny. Children navigated American schools, their accents betraying origins, while wives formed social clubs amid cultural shock. Integration accelerated post-1950. Huntsville boomed as the future, with Von Braun's team embedding in Army life. Citizenship via Mexican loopholes granted permanence. By 1959, most had U.S. passports. Socially, they were assimilated unevenly. Von Braun hobnobbed with Disney, that's Walt Disney's, scripting space fantasies. Others, like Bus, rose quietly in NASA. Yet the shadows lingered. FBI surveillance tracked Nazi sympathies. Returnees, like 36 scientists, faced West German stigma. For many, America offered redemption or escape from Europe's ghosts. Legacy and impact of Paperclip's fingerprints mark modern America. No question about it. Rocketry leaped. Von Braun's Saturn V realized Kennedy's moonshot. DeBus's launches birthed the space shuttle. Aeronautics advanced via Busman's wings. Chemical innovations yielded sarin, countermeasures, and synthetics like ear thermometers. Militarily, it fortified Cold War arsenals. Redstone begot ICBMs, that's intercontinental ballistic missiles. Bloom's biodefense countered Soviet threats. Intelligence-wise, Gellen's org evolved into BND, shaping CIA ops. Civilian spillovers enriched life. Electromagnetic tape from miniaturization, non-running hosiery from polymers. Economically, Huntsville's $10 billion patent windfall fueled the Sun Belt boom. But legacy includes scars. Ethical precedents echoed in Tuskegee, MK Ultra, declassification sustained debate. Jacobson's 2014 tomb revived scrutiny, questioning if Soviet rivalry justified harboring monsters. Today, as space commercialization echoes von Braun's vision, Paperclip warns genius untethered from morality courts peril. Operation Paperclip encapsulates the 20th century's paradoxes. From Holocaust ashes rose the lunar triumphs. Recruiting 1,600 minds propelled U.S. hegemony, but at justice's expense. As Krim notes, quote, lasting impact on American science is less than people imagine, unquote. Yet, its moral cost, it endures. In an era of AI ethics and biowar fears, Paperclip urges vigilance. Innovation must serve humanity, not subvert it. In closing, it is interesting to note in Jim Marr's book, The Rise of the Fourth Reich, the secret societies that threatened to take over America from 2008, he discusses IG Farben as a massive industrial conglomerate during the Nazi era. It was the world's largest chemical and pharmaceutical company, often called, quote, state within state, unquote, for its control over synthetic fuels, rubber, and explosives, and its use of slave labor in facilities like those near Auschwitz. Mars highlights its deep ties to the Nazi regime, including producing Zyklon B gas and receiving support from American firms as part of a broader argument about enduring Nazi corporate influence. Thank you very much for listening. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. I really would appreciate it. Until the next time, goodbye, everyone.